Hello viewers, I'm back again. So just a bit of an update for you. I've been just having a look at some of the comments that have been coming back after I posted my dream of potentially a rapture. So anyhow, basically some of the comments there, just excuse me, somebody needs a question. Yeah, so just a brief interruption there. But looking at some of the comments, I just wanted to give some feedback on that. Basically, I believe that at this time in the church history, God is doing a new thing again, or the same new thing he's done once before in the history of the church, back to the kind of days of the original apostolic church, the time after Christ's resurrection, and he basically gives the great mission to his disciples to go out and spread the gospel all around the world. And so people like Peter, were going out and spreading the gospel, and then later on Paul became an apostle after he had a vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus. So that kind of early Christian church movement, which I would call the apostolic church, was really basically at that time a very new thing. So Christianity was a new religious movement that at the time had extreme opposition from the old school Jewish religious institutions from which it came from. Because as we know, Jesus was a Jew, and we know his backstory, and how he was a descendant of David, and how he fulfills the prophecies of the Messiah in the Bible, and so on and so forth, proving himself the Son of God by dying on the cross and then being raised from the dead. So, having known all these things, we know that Jesus heralded a new era in the relationship of God's people to God. But that old school religious institution back in that day was very reluctant to change. Not only were the apostles facing opposition against the old school Jewish religious institutions with all of its hierarchy and hypocrisy, but they were also facing the Gentile world of false gods and a society of moral decay, where people were demonically possessed. People were suffering from a host of illnesses, being blind, being lame, crippled, having skin diseases, and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of opposition to the apostles in the day, and the early Christian movement was basically referred to as a cult, the cult of Christ, because the outsiders to Christianity were looking at the practice of the sacraments, the taking of the bread and drinking of the wine, which Jesus refers to as his blood and his body, quite literally. It was viewed from the outside, from outside of Christian belief systems, and even within some of the Christian believers' community. They were not certain what Jesus was talking about, and it became viewed as a cult, or something that was occult to the religious organizations of the day. They were drinking blood and eating flesh, so it was a weird cult or an occult practice. Jesus was sometimes accused by the Jewish leaders of having the devil or demons in him, because he was able to drive out demons. The same thing happened to the apostles. They were looked on very strangely by doing what Jesus had empowered them to do, by being able to drive out demons. So they were opposing demonic forces. They were healing sick people, healing blind people. Paul at one stage miraculously shook off a snake after he was bitten by it. And people thought he was going to die, which he normally would have, but obviously empowered by God, he shook it off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. So that would have looked like magic back in the day. So not only was the early apostolic church, it's a hard thing to pronounce, viewed as a cult religion or an occult form of practice, which involves, exorcising demons and healing people with seemingly magical powers, speaking in tongues at Pentecost when the Spirit came upon them, behaving like drunken men, sort of mystical, magical stuff, which would have been viewed by the religious institutions of the day as weird and wonderful, as, like magical witchcraft stuff, getting into occult practices, dealing with demons, drinking blood and eating flesh, all this sort of stuff. So it's very much viewed as a cult or an occult religion. It was also sort of looked at as being mystical, magical. So you could also say that it was the early Christian movement was viewed as being New Age, because, we've never seen this before. This is a new thing. This is some weird New Age religion, It's not like the old school religious practices that the Jews were familiar with, the old sacrificial system and stuff like that. So God's doing it all over again. He's going back to that kind of mission with the church. He's saying, okay, religious institutions of this time are really become just another version of the old school Jewish churches back in Jesus' day. They've become just as corrupt institutionally, just as focused on making money and kind of putting themselves on the pedestal and being very much controlling and talking down to their congregations, treating them like, only they know the truth, only they have the means of getting to God. And it's very much about money with religious institutions today. They're staying in a safe comfort zone. You're not willing to break outside of that sort of mold. So it's really pretty much across the board. The religious institutions that I've been involved with are teaching more or less what they call prosperity gospels. So it's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Pay your $5 to get your golden coupon to go to Willy Wonka's heaven, something like that. It's all about how much money you give us as to what you get out of Christianity. That's really the way they're selling it, and that's what they're doing. They're really selling a sort of Christian salvation message, but it's not a genuine one. It's a disingenuine one. It's a false, really, gospel, doing it that way, saying that it's all about money to get into heaven, and the only way you're going to get there is kind of via us, and what we say goes. That's going back to the old hypocrisy and corruption of the Jewish day. So I think what's going to happen now, the thing that's happening now, is a repeat of what happened back then. There are people springing up that are going to start, talking about issues of our day. Because let's face it, looking back in history, what has Christianity done? It's done some amazing things. It's relegated the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the gods of the Vikings, all these some false gods along the way, like Baal and things like that. They've all been relegated to mythology, legend, or dare I say, the MC universe. So they've become like cartoons. And Christianity, stands out as one of the great world religions of the day today. And all those other things have been relegated, but that's been a battle hard fought and won. So all the apostles have faced incredible challenges and difficulties, breaking through all of this barriers in their day, the challenges of Christianity to break through, and the challenges of them to demonstrate, that Christianity is not a cult, it's not occult, it's not new aged, It's not about crystals and I don't know much about New Age stuff, but it's, candles and crystals and incense or whatever. It's not that. It's not magical and mystical. It's a very Christ alone religion that I'm talking about. Faith-based Christ alone, But certainly you don't want to be somebody who limits yourself to that knowledge. I think Christianity in its day would have been considered a very esoteric knowledge. So knowledge that was limited to those that are initiated into Christianity, those that have heard the gospel. Just excuse me.